Hello there. Today we are taking a little hike in the Walnut Creek open space. We went to a different entrance and I can't tell you what entrance that was, so I don't really know. But an interesting thing that we saw are these trees. Now they don't look like much right now because we are going into winter, so they've lost all their leaves, but they are the California buckeye. And they put out these big coney or cone-shaped bushels of flowers. So a bunch of little flowers that are kind of in this big cone shape. And then once all those flowers get pollinated, they create these things that look like maybe like little brown tennis balls just hanging from the tree. Now this one doesn't have any hanging, and we'll try and get you a picture or a video if we find one where it does have the little balls hanging. But this is the outside. And then eventually that splits open, and inside are these seeds. So these are the seed pods, and they look very, very similar to chestnuts. They're a little bit lighter in color and they're larger than chestnuts, and that's one of the ways you can tell that they aren't chestnuts. They've got this nice golden brown seed coat on them. These are some of the smaller ones that we found, but you can tell they're smaller than my palm. We've found a few that are basically the size of my palm. Now, you don't want to get these confused with oak galls. If you remember a video a little while back, we talked about oak galls, and those are another. Let's see if I can find one. Nope, that's another chestnut. Anyways, oak galls are another round thing that's this color, and they come off of oak trees, and it's the oak tree's response to a wasp laying its eggs on the branches. It's a very bizarre thing, and you have all probably seen oak galls. They're going to be a lot lighter, and they don't split open because they're not seeds. They're just a weird, pithy response to wasps, whereas the buckeye, these are their big seeds. It's really cool to see seeds this size because most of the time we see little tiny seeds, and the largest seeds that we see in this area, minus the buckeyes, are going to be acorns. So one way to identify a buckeye tree when you're walking around in nature, and it might be different seasons. There's a couple different ways, so let's talk about it. When the buckeye tree is blooming in around April time, maybe a little bit later, you're gonna see, like I said, those large cones, and like I showed you in the picture just before. So if you see those large cones of flowers that are gonna be like white or pinkish, mixed with bark that is gray, like a pale gray, not like a rich gray, like a very pale gray, and leaves that are palmate. Now, palmate leaves, you can kind of think of we all have a palm of our hand. Palmate leaves generally have 5 to 7 leaflets, and a leaflet just means a little part of the leaf. That will have palmate leaves, and they look like a hand, not actually like a hand. Don't confuse anyone. They look like leaves, but they're shaped like a hand. And so if those three are together, right, the cone-shaped flowers, the gray bark, and the palmate leaves, then you pretty sure you might have a buckeye. You're looking at a buckeye. Now, if there are no flowers and you've got palmate leaves and gray bark, might be a buckeye. Another way to see is those little those like seed pods when they're hanging off the tree. It's such a bizarre thing. It's like no other tree does. I guess liquid amber trees do that with the spiky balls, or some people call them monkey balls or spiky balls. Things that just hang off the tree, but the buckeyes it's super bizarre. So if you see those hanging like in the last photo, then you definitely got a buckeye. So I didn't show you them super up close, but here is the buckeye seed. And a couple really interesting things about, oh, you can also see, look at how massive this one is. So big. About the buckeyes are, they're kind of like cultural heritage. So California buckeyes, aptly named, are endemic to California. It means they are only in California. So there are other buckeye trees, but the California buckeye cannot really be found anywhere else, only California. So the native peoples, or the indigenous peoples that used to live here, would eat the seeds. Now, I do not recommend you to go out eating seeds because they are poisonous when raw. If we are, as a modern culture and society, are not educated in how to properly prepare buckeye to be safe to eat, so even if you feel like you might want to try eating them, you don't need to. There's plenty of other things that you can eat. But the native peoples used to break them up, mush them down, roast that mush, that powder, or that flour kind of, and then they would leach out the tannins or leach out the poisons. So, but they would pour water over it, let it soak for a while, kind of like what we did when we were talking about acorns, except acorns are not poisonous in small amounts, whereas buckeyes can be poisonous in smaller amounts. Another interesting thing, similarly to chestnuts, now these look very similar to chestnuts as I had mentioned before, they are known to be lucky. Now take that with what you want, but people have been known to carry around a buckeye in their purse, in their pocket, or keep it in their home for luck. Chestnuts, again, are like this big compared to this. And chestnuts are also considered to be lucky, and people carry them around. And I think it's funny that people would carry this in their pockets. It's just so big. Another interesting thing that I guess the native peoples would do, two things. They would take the poisons from this and they would poison fish. And from my research, it looked like they'd poison the fish and then consume the fish, but they would cook the fish, and I guess that cooking process made the poison not poisonous any longer. It also seemed that they would somehow attach like string of some sort to these, maybe poke a hole through it and attach a string and put it across, like maybe a large stick across a riverbed, and hang them on the large stick into the river, so that when fish would swim by, fish would smack their heads on these massive seeds and kind of get stunned or get knocked out a little bit, and then they'd be able to fish the fish out a lot quicker or a lot easier because the fish would be a little disoriented, which I think is sad but hilarious. Like, these things that people come up with to survive and to thrive in the natural environment. I originally came up with the idea of showing you guys the buckeyes when I was on a walk with my grandmother recently, and she originally thought they were chestnuts until we talked about it and realized they were buckeyes, because there's no chestnuts in the area. There used to be, but it looks like they've all died out, and I'll have to do more research on that as to why. But she was telling me, and I think that you guys might think this is funny, that she grew up in England, and there are chestnuts, water chestnuts, or horse chestnuts, I think is what she would get, horse chestnuts. And they look very similar. They're about this size or a little smaller, and they drill or poke holes in them. I guess they dry them out too, or maybe roast them so they're like really hard. They tie them to a string, and then they call them conkers. And I guess what they would do is you try and find the biggest one you can find, and you get it really hard, and then they would kind of smack them together on this string, is how she described it to me. So they're like hitting, and who's ever conker broke first would lose. So then, if Sally and Susie had their conkers, and then Susie's conker broke, then Sally's would be the winner, and Sally's would move on to the next person, and they'd go around with all their friends and smack chestnuts, which I think is so weird but so funny, and how I just really like hearing stories of things, you know, as current day people, we see these on the ground and we go, oh, a buckeye seed, or oh, what is that? Or you don't even see them. And there's people out there who used to survive on them, and then people out there who that was a game they'd play every year. It's just super, super interesting. I encourage you to look around in the area if you see buckeyes. There are tons of buckeye trees on the Lafayette Moraga Trail. Tons of them. That's where I found my massive stash of buckeye seeds. And to just kind of give the tree a look, see if you could identify it. You know, the winter's the hardest time to identify trees because they don't have the leaves on them, right? So if you can identify it now, you're set. All right, have fun. Don't eat them. Don't smack each other with them.